Join Greg and Richard right here on Dark and Red. Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, the Nottingham Forest podcast, hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and the hot hand himself, Richard Spray. Joining us on the panel, we have the Statman Danscape and Raf the Random Pundit. So, a rest is as good as a break, they say. Or is it a break is as good as a rest? Either way, Forest have had the benefit of a rest over the international break, and all the talk has continued to be about the manager's position and the candidates waiting in the wings. We'll chip in with our thoughts on Ange Postecoglou and the potential of a Sean Dyche appointment before turning our focus onto the huge match at the City Ground on Saturday for Nottingham Forest versus Chelsea. The rest is over, but for Ange, is it now make or break?
Celtic, I won a double in my first year, so...
Get them in the fifth.
Yeah, well, of course I can, yeah. I mean, I may have to have a second year here, mate.
Break.
If people want to make an assessment of me after 3.5 weeks, in which we've had 6 or 7 games ahead, then there's nothing I can do about that.
Break.
I expect to have a discussion with the owner and everyone else at the football club about sort of what we've embarked on here.
Break.
I did have an option. I could have been sitting on the couch watching the game today and not be in the middle of it. You know, I'd rather be here. Much rather be. I love a fight. So it's a fight.
Break.
What's wrong with something being hard? I took this role on knowing it will be a massive challenge with what we were trying to do in terms of changing the direction of the club.
Break.
What's wrong with something being hard? What's wrong with something being hard? What's wrong with something being hard?
Break.
Indeed, what is wrong with something being hard, they say. Well, it is definitely that at the moment, and we are back with Premier League football this weekend, and I, for one, have actually quite enjoyed the break. I've got to be honest with you, I've quite enjoyed the break from the Premier League. I've enjoyed the break from the podcast, if I'm honest with you. I know we did one with Jamie last week, but just a chance to kind of like not have to talk about it because it's been doing my head in. My head is a bit frazzled. I've been saying that to anyone that I have spoken to. My brain's a little bit scrambled by it all, but it's time to kind of put your big boy pants back on again because we're back to chat all about it. So please do join us in the comments and let us know that you are here. Please do go ahead and hit like and subscribe. If you do subscribe, we're very, very grateful. We hope you'll stick around, even if you hear things that you don't quite agree with. We are going to try and, give fair opinions. We debate everything. We talk about Forest because this is a Nottingham Forest podcast. This is not an Ange Postecoglou podcast. So whilst we are grateful for everybody that has jumped on and subscribed and come along for the ride, you are going to hear criticism against the manager when things aren't going well, as much as you will hear praise. So I say to those Australians out there, we love you dearly. Thank you very much for hopping on, and thank you very much for subscribing. But look, you're going to hear a bit of criticism. Some of you are strong Ange disciples, and that's fine. No problem at all. I really respect that. We really respect that. But ultimately, we're going to try and say it how it is. So I just say to you guys, expect that opinions might not be something that you share. You might call us deluded. You might say that, we're laughable, etc., etc., etc. But we're going to pick it all apart so you can make your own opinions on that. Richard Spray, good morning. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great. But first and foremost, everyone needs to know there's a certain birthday boy on the podcast. So happy birthday to Greg Oram. 40 years young, right? You're 40 years old now? Yeah.
I wish. Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't mind telling you that I'm 51 today. I haven't got a problem with that. I think age is just a number. Right. I'm feeling it a little bit more perhaps than I did, a year or two ago. But no, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, but doing good, doing good. I mean, I look, I'm excited to see them play again. I'm excited to see our boys take the pitch and hopefully put in a good performance and all of that. I'm all in on the Reds as always, but I know where I stand on the Ange situation. I feel pretty peaceful, I guess, for where my mind's at with that. But at the same time, trust our owner and trust our club to do the right thing for the club moving forward. But excited to see them adorn that beautiful Garibaldi red and hopefully, like I said, hopefully get a victory, hopefully get some points. We need that desperately to avoid and stave off dropping any further. But still just looking forward to seeing some football again. It's been a couple of weeks, as you said, other than the England, watching England do incredibly well and watching Elliot Anderson be the engine of that team. So, which is a great thing. So, but definitely feeling good about things moving forward.
Excellent. Okay. So Dan and Rafa with us. We'll say hello to you guys as we go around because we want to kind of get into it more so. But Rich, I'll just stick with you for the moment. So look, we're going to be talking about the Chelsea match. We got lots to get through in terms of that, but all the speak and talk and chat has been about the pressure that's on Ange. Is he going to be sacked over the international break? That hasn't happened. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. He's going to have the Chelsea game, which comes up in just 3 days' time. And in the background as well, there's all of a sudden more credence being placed on the fact that Sean Dyche might be a viable candidate for Forest if Marinakis looks to pull the trigger. John Percy came out with a Dyche piece, if you like, or added weight to that. And I think when John Percy gets involved, people do pay more attention. He's a very reputable a journalist with his finger on the pulse in the Midlands and East Midlands and Nottingham especially. So, people think, well, actually, what? Maybe there are itchy fingers now over at the City Ground. Look, just give us in a nutshell. And again, I want to try and move us along quite steadily. And the boys want to chip in as well. But give us in a nutshell where you're at on Ange, Rich. You've got a very strong position on this. Where you're at on Ange and when he gets sacked, because I think you think it's going to happen sooner rather than later, is Sean Dyche the right man?
Yeah. So firstly, I do think that Ange needs to go. And again, I don't put it all on him. I think of the context and the situation at hand. I mean, if you listen to us talk to Jamie Tatler in our last episode on the one with, I was very clear. I just felt like it evidence speaks to beyond the 7-game sample size. He just has struggled. I mean, I think he's had 1.1 points on average per match over the last 44 matches that he's played. So we're talking in excess of an entire season worth of Premier League matches. He's been able to accumulate 1.1 points. That's less than what Sean Dyche has done in his last full season worth of matches. So we're talking 38 plus. So I'm not saying that necessarily means that Dyche is going to take us to a stratosphere that we know our owner wants to get to, because that may not be the case. But it's a question of, and I put this out on X, risk management. And can we ill afford to continue to move forward? I understand 7 games in this current season isn't a lot.
I've lost audio.
Just lost a bit of volume there. Carry on. Go. I think you just came back in, Rich.
No, still can't hear him.
We've still lost your mic at the moment. All of a sudden, I'll come back to you in a moment. I'll switch to Danscape. Morning, Dan. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, morning. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. Same question to you, really. Where are you at on Ange, and is Sean Dyche the right man?
It's been a weird week and a half so far of the international break. I don't think I've been this sort of detached from Forest news and actually caring about what's going on for a while, because it's kind of like I sort of don't quite believe the Dyche rumours. I don't quite believe what we're seeing. I don't really know where we are in terms of this whole pre-season, and this summer's been a little bit like this, where there's been these stories where you get one side of things and then you get another side of things. You don't fully understand what's going on, and this just feels like another one of those at the moment. So when the Dyche sort of rumor came out, it's kind of like, okay, well, are we really at that point? 7 games into a season, are we sort of ready to jump to that complete change again, like another 90-degree turn in terms of what we're trying to do? So it's been a strange couple of weeks or a week and a half. Like, there's only so much drama a man can take when it comes to their football club. I just think we're in a weird position now, aren't we? Because there's every chance that Ange goes and and this squad of players can win these next 2 games. There's every chance that happens, and then all of a sudden you're in this position again where you're like, well, what do we do now? Are we still going to change the manager? Are we now back? Is it fixed everything? Well, no, it probably hasn't fixed everything. but you could still be in a better place. And then you've got another decision to make, or you change the manager now and it feels too early. So it's just very hard for me, it's very hard to, have a clear thought on it, because either way it feels a bit messy. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Okay. Richard, are you there? Can we hear you?
Does this sound okay? Does it working?
It sounds okay. I can come back to you in just a second. We're still there. Just want to quickly say hello. GL says, let's get some positive vibes, people. Good morning to Jackie Howarth in the comments. Nice to see you, Jackie. Tim Shipman's with us, says, morning, lads. He also says, still can't see and surviving this. And Bruce C in Texas is with us, saying, of course, good morning, gentlemen. And Raf. Standard procedure from Bruce. Lots of happy birthday messages coming my way. Thank you very much to everyone in the comments. It's very nice of you to say so. So, sponsored by Shipstones, Pat Brett, to name but a few. Thank you very much for that. All right. Going to come back to you in a second, Rich. I'm going to quickly give Raf a chance to chip in. Good morning, Raf. How are you, sir?
Morning, Squire. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Same question. Where are you on Ange? Where are you on Dyche?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And just before I kind of give you that, I do think there's a really important thing here that I just really want to talk about. And it goes to varying states of mental health of the fan base. And I've been privileged enough to talk to lots of people. And it's just a matter of reality, really, that people handle stress and they worry and other things at different levels to other people. And when the club's going through turmoil, it doesn't make you any less of a fan if you choose to just tune out for your own mental health. I've got mates that feel like they need to be on top of everything and they worry about what's happening with Ange and everything else as well. But you can see it's a massive detriment to their own health. And I can only imagine the people that are around them as well kind of bear the brunt of that. So I don't like this whole badge of what makes a true fan. And I think everyone is cut in very different ways. So for everyone out there, just look after yourself. If it's all a bit too much and you find yourself getting stressed, just take a step back. It's not the end of the world. And Forest will still be there and still causing shockwaves every single day when you come back. Just something a little bit of that. About Ange, I'm excited for this 2-week break because I think this is the actual first amount of time that he has had with, albeit not the whole squad, because some of them key ones are away, but what he is trying to do does not happen overnight. Yes, some of the results, well, all the results have not been ideal up until now, but it is going to take time. I take Rich's point of the fact that this is about risk management and we're a quarter of the way through our fixtures in Europa, right? And we are very near the trap door, but there's a lot of the Premier League still to go. So for me, I would still like to give him this game at least, and maybe one or two more, to be able to see if indeed he has managed to get what he wants out of this squad with 2 weeks more. And we're starting to see a little bit more of what Ange Ball is. The Porto game, as much as I want to win it, we've got two of our toughest out of the 8 fixtures that Ange has been handed at the beginning. We've got 5 fixtures afterwards that I would hope that we would win afterwards, and that gets us to at least within the conversation of progressing at least with a playoff place anyway. So the damage, if he loses Porto, it's still not knocking us out of Europa, and there's a lot of Premier League games still to go. So for me, I haven't lost total faith. It's not ideal by any stretch, and I am split between I'm kind of getting towards Rich between risk management, but I think there's still a bit more rope still to go.
Indeed. John from Oz and Fiji says, karma with the audio, Richard. He's clearly an Ange fan. He wants to change our belief system. And Mark Wayway NFFC says, happy birthday, Greg. Give Ange until the end of Christmas. All right. Okay. So I'm going to come back to you now, Richard. Hopefully your audio's back. Your camera's working. You were telling us about your thoughts on Ange, and I think you're about to get in on the possibility of it being Sean Dyche.
Yeah. So does this sound okay? Can you guys hear me all right? Yeah. Sometimes the gremlins get fixed. It's like, did you unplug it and plug it back in? That kind of situation. But anyway, I understand where people are coming from. I completely understand where Raf and Dan are coming from. I mean, there's a lot of validity to that. I also grasp that there's a difference between saying someone's not a good manager and someone's not a good fit for what we're trying to do right now. And I think maybe our owner is seeing that. Look, we exceeded the timeline for us to get into Europe. None of us really expected that to happen. We then were asking a manager who plays a similar style to Dyche or to David Moyes, managers of that ilk. And so we were asking him to now lead the charge to switch to more of a possession-based style, which we know is not his really within his DNA. That's not really his approach to things. So maybe there's a sense of realism. Yeah, I'm sure putting stuff out there through Percy was kind of a climate survey scenario, like what's going to be the reaction to that kind of thing. I've heard others say that on other podcasts, and I agree with that. And like I said, I don't say that Ange is a bad manager. What I'm saying is I don't know if he's shown a propensity to lift us, his previous squad at least, out of a very difficult situation where the form was exponentially dipping in the Premier League, and it didn't change. So he did a great job, obviously winning Europa. Kind of went to the more pragmatic route, right? As Raf's talked about in terms of the way that he approached that in order to win that. So I think the teams we're facing from a squad to squad sort of comparison are not better than us. So I'd rather go with the devil in this sense, which is that the way that Dyche plays, there's no questioning his passion and his belief in the club and his love for the club, as well as those who he has on the bench. I understand we've had situations where, like, Stuart Pearce came in. It's not always worked out brilliantly to have former players come back and try to coach a team into success. But at the same time, I just trust that way of approaching, because if nothing else, we're going to be harder to beat. And I'm not seeing Ange ball kick in, and I don't know how long you can afford for that to happen. Because what if it doesn't happen? As Mark said, by Christmas, now we're 12 weeks in further? I mean, maybe I'm being too fearful, and I'm getting too much down the path that we're going to get to a relegation state, but we're right above that now. And even if we stick with the same level of points that Ange averaged over that 44 games I mentioned, we're still going to be hovering around that point. And so I get what everyone's saying and completely respect it and can see that making a lot of sense. It's just, I'd rather go with someone who I know is invested and is passionate about the community and passionate about what we are as a club, and then hope that we are harder to beat in that through the process and get back to what I think our boys are more used to, so that you have the full next preseason to try to get someone in that can give them the time to actually make that transition and get to a different, more competitive state in terms of how we play, or has some sort of balance between those two things. I don't know, but it comes down to who else is out there that you might trust that has Premier League experience, that you're comfortable, or recent Premier League experience that has at least shown the ability to keep a team from getting relegated. Like I said, that's not what we all envisioned. That's not the script that we wrote when the season started. But obviously everything has flipped on its head. Things have happened that we didn't anticipate, unless you're Ross Taylor, who predicted that Nuno would be gone before Christmas. From who's on our podcast. But I think we all didn't anticipate that happening. So it is what it is at this situation. It would have been difficult for any manager coming in. We all acknowledge that. I just would rather go with the devil, and someone who I trust and who has faith and passion about what we do as a city and as a club. So,
I mean, I'm going to chip in with where I'm at, and then I'm going to move us on to the Chelsea match, and because we've got lots to get through. There's lots that I've said on this, and for those of you that haven't caught, I was on TalkSport 2 last week with Ollie Klink and being asked about Ange, so that is available for you to go and listen to, and it kind of sums up where I'm at. But trying to get a gauge of the fan base, it feels like everybody is almost feeling like they need to pigeonhole themselves into a compartment as to how they feel about this, because everyone's trying to kind of grasp a sense of what's going to happen without really knowing what's going to happen. Nobody was calling for Ange's head after Betis. No one was calling. Everyone came away from Betis. But then, of course, you lose at home to Sunderland. All of a sudden, on that one game, was that enough for people to start getting itchy feet? You had a lot of people that didn't want him in the first place, and a lot of people that were kind of like, well, let's give this guy a chance. All the people that give the guy a chances are the ones that are potentially going to be the movers. They're your kind of like, they're your swing voters. You got your hardcore, don't want Ange, never going to want Ange, I don't care what he does, can't stand him. They're already in place. Your swing voters have moved significantly, it would seem, from what we see on social media and what we hear in the crowd after Sunderland and after Midtjylland. And of course, Newcastle didn't help, albeit we tried to find positives, and there were some in that first half. Jared Cunha played and we liked him, but ultimately we lost 2-0 away at Newcastle, which in the whole scheme of things isn't a very big surprise. You know, losing at home to Sunderland was a surprise. Losing at home to Midtjylland in the Europa was a surprise. There's the two surprises, the big surprises. It wasn't a surprise losing in your first game away at Arsenal. Yes, of course, Swansea, 10 changes. Let's add context. Giving people a chance, going 2-0 up, losing 3-2. That was obviously not helpful and a surprise. But there's so much in there that when you add context to it, that you have to kind of weigh everything up and say, look, are you one of those people that says it isn't working and it's never going to work? Get this guy out of our club now. Or are you, look, for fuck's sake, he's been there 4 weeks. He's had 7 games. We've seen green shoots of what this could be. The only way it's going to work is if you give this guy more time. If you pull the plug now on the basis that it's never going to work, and you then switch back to a Sean Dyche, who, let's face it, is going to come in and give us a brand of football that none of us really want to see. It's going to get very defensive. We might start hitting on the counter, but we've seen that before, and we've seen how teams can line up against us and can counter that. I've said before, we've had a lot of new faces coming into the club that are still trying to adjust themselves. Kali Mwendu, who we all lauded, has not got going yet. Bakwa, we've seen flashes of it. And Doy, we've seen a few more flashes of it. You know, McAtee hasn't got going yet. Amari Hutchinson isn't allowed to get going yet by the looks of things. You know, Zinchenko injured, Douglas Luiz injured, Murillo injured. All these things that pile up on top of each other make me still think, because I've been so much kind of like trying to swing either way, trying to get a grip on how I really feel about this. And Raf, you are bang on with what you said about mental health, because I have felt frazzled and I've had to really distance myself from it and not engage too much because it started to hurt my head. And that's why I said before, I've enjoyed the break from the podcast because I knew we'd have to talk about it. And now we're back talking about it. You know, I feel this anxiety in my chest where I want it to work so badly because I back any manager coming in. And I believe that Ange Postecoglou is a good guy. Part of me also thinks it's not working, it's not going to work. But then I'm going with the crowd. I'm following the masses. And I asked those people out there, what evidence have you got that it's not working? Apart from the obvious stuff, well, we lost at home to Midtjylland. Come on, guys. There's always going to be, you're always going to like hit the wall a little bit. You're always going to like things aren't going to go smoothly. You're going to have an edge that doesn't quite go in. So be fair. Be fair. That's where I'm at. I don't know what's going to happen. He's obviously going to be given Chelsea, but if we lose against Chelsea, does he get sacked? What's the point of giving him Chelsea if he just win or get sacked? Is he going to get Porto? The only way that he really gets a chance is if he gets the next 5 or 6 games, and we get a chance to see him really now, hopefully push on. Everyone's making snap judgments, and people that I really respect as well. You know, I've seen that are making real snap judgments, and I'm like, everyone just calm down a little bit, okay? I want to put on the screen some of what's on X. There's an account called Nottingham Forest, of course. He says, remember, Dyche doesn't come to Forest on his own. He brings within 2 legends of the club. Dyche also trained under Clough as a player. Now tell me Sean Dyche and his team aren't built for Forest. Talk about romanticising it. I mean, I've never met anyone or known of anyone so intrinsically linked to our club who never played for the first team in my life. Sean Dyche was an academy player and was shown the door. Yes, he's a lovely guy with the gruff voice. We all love Sean Dyche. But Sean Dyche didn't play for Forest. He was trained under Clough. Really, was he? You know, he wasn't a Forest player, but he's so linked to Forest, like he's the second coming. Jono, Dyche has credence and respect in the game, and his football isn't as prehistoric as some believe. Yes, it's more direct, but it's organised and always feels joined up. This will be the best squad of players he's ever worked with. It's shit, but we're here. But we are where we are. We need to and the change is needed. Fair enough. Dyche is a shocker, says European Reds. He's 20 times worse than Nuno, so this is the conflicting view on Dyche. Average Premier League finish 15th. Some would say, well, we'll take 15th here and now because we're in the shit. He's never managed a game in a European competition proper in his life. I'm not sure about that. I have to go back and check on Burnley. Never gone beyond the 5th round of the FA Cup. Maranaka's promised trophies in progress. His managers, I can't quite see that because it's on the slide, but basically his manager's selection is taken us backwards. One True Voice says, this season is purely about survival now. Dyche is the man to ensure that happens. Simo says, Sean Dyche would walk across razor blades for the job. His football is Nuno Mark II, he goes on to say. Rocky says, Dyche is splitting opinion, I see. I do get the point if he was in this position at Christmas, but then he would be perfect. But we need someone, if Ange goes, not sure here the answer is, we won't pay compensation for anyone decent. That's worth mentioning. And of course, Brummy Tricky, who divides opinion left, right, and centre, says, I can't believe how many people want Dyche in. My head is falling off. So look, you've got a lot of people there in the Dyche camp and against Dyche camp. I've kind of like splurged out how I feel about it. And lots of you in the comments will agree or disagree. It's about opinions, guys. I don't know where I'm at. I want Forest to do well. The most important thing is I want Forest to win every game. I don't care who the manager is. Steve Battlematch, which is put on the screen, says we all suspect he's on borrowed time. It's a results business. My guess is he's going to get 2 to 3 games to get some wins, but the fans need to get behind the team 100%. Agreed. All right, we are thinking about Chelsea. We've all had our say on Dyche, and we're going to probably still be talking about Dyche in the next section. Richard Spray, thoughts on the game ahead? I mean, do we even know what we're going to get? Do we even know?
There were times under Nuno as well that it was a bit of a crapshoot as to what we looked like, at least that first season. I think we know. I think he's starting to inch towards what seems like a starting 11. How that's all going to unfold, when I know Chris Wood said, once it fires on all cylinders, it's going to be, I guess I'm paraphrasing here, somewhat dominating, and it's going to be a great spectacle, for lack of a better word. But I just don't know if that's going to be the way that he's going to approach it, because if he has he's either going to go all in on his style and just let it play out, or he's going to get pragmatic again and hoping that they can do something different. I just think, that's asking a leopard to change his spots a little bit, and I just don't know if that's going to work. So it didn't seemingly work against Newcastle, at least for the entire 90 minutes, obviously. So I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you.
Under Ange, we haven't been annihilated. No, we haven't.
That's true, but we're not scoring any goals either, really. It's, that's the calling card, right? For him and the way he approaches things. But I'm hoping we put in a good performance. I think we will. I think the boys will come back somewhat galvanized and ready to roll. Certainly we worry about Elliot Anderson, where his legs are at with just the amount of time he's played, because every time he plays for England, he pretty much plays the entire match. So that's a little bit of a disconcerting scenario, but ultimately I think we'll put in a good performance. That's what I hope. We'll hopefully make it difficult for Chelsea. It'll be at home. I'm sure the crowd will be up for it, as they always can be. I just worry about, is there really a legitimate opportunity to score? Because ultimately we just seem to be a bit snake bitten right now in front of goal, and that really hasn't changed a whole lot. So, yeah,
I think you're right, Dan. Ange is very strong-willed. What's he going to do? Do you think? He's up against it. He knows he's up against it. Is he going to come out all guns blazing? Do you reckon?
Yeah, although he's not had some of the key players, has he? So we talk about this week and a half, 2 weeks that he's got, but the reality is he's not had at least 3, probably 4 key players to really work with to implement his style still, and everything we talk about. So there's still that get out clause that you can almost have by saying, well, half of the main bulk of this team I've still not really had a good amount of time on the training pitch with them, but we're never going to get that now. That's got to go out the window. Like, that was the preseason, that's gone. So whatever happens now has to be about how do you get results. The Chelsea team that we're facing are a little bit hit and miss. I don't think they're quite as, they don't steamroller teams week in, week out. They beat Liverpool, but previous to that, they lost to Brighton and someone else. I can't remember off the top of my head now. Brentford, was it?
Man U.
Brentford and Man U. Yeah, so they're not this sort of, prime Man City, prime Liverpool.
They're not a well-oiled machine yet. They've flattered to deceive at times.
They're functional.
They're not quite a well-oiled machine themselves yet.
Well, but they flipped us at the end of last season. They started becoming solid. They started shoring up, and they win by a goal basically, and they've sort of carried that on a little bit this season. But they've just been even more clinical. So they've secured the points. So it's a game that at home, in any other time, we'd be going into it thinking, well, we can get a result here. We can turn these guys over and nick a win. Whether or not the Ange style that we're going to employ, for me, it just all comes down to how much the players are actually on board with it now. I think we're at that point where there's so much noise, and you can talk about style all day long. It's not really about the style. It's about whether these players know their jobs inside out enough that turn up to deliver the result, and then that they've got that belief in it that they, between each other, they will actually be able to withstand inevitable periods of pressure, and inevitable mistakes and stuff don't turn into a collapse. And that now comes down to the mentality side of it. Hopefully the fact that we are where we are now puts us a little bit more on that underdog footing of like, right, let's go and show these guys that we aren't going to be in a relegation battle, as opposed to this expectation of being top half and expectation of winning Europa League and all that. Like, I think that reset maybe could have happened over this couple of weeks, and hopefully so we surprise them.
Raf, we welcome all the international players back, and we always look out to make sure no one's coming back with any injuries. Chris Wood goes off yesterday. We're being told that it's not so much an injury, but managing minutes and precaution ahead of Saturday. But how are you feeling about the possibility that Chris Wood might miss? Could this be an opportunity more now for Igor Jesus and Callum Owendo?
So I put something out pretty controversial, or most people agree with it, but maybe
we like controversial on here. We love controversial.
And I was actually going, and you know me, I'm a silver linings person, and let's just face it, Chris Wood is not in form, like at the moment, and it's a tough managerial decision that comes with flack of dropping Chris Wood based on what he did last season, other than the run-in of last season. Igor Jesus is a striker on form, enough to be called up to the Brazil side, right? Again. So it makes, I think there's a silver lining here of a no foul, drop Chris Wood because he's got a knock, and give the other strikers a full start and chance. And I think maybe there might be a happy coincidence that comes out of it, that we get some strikers on form, get us more mobile up top, and away we go. So it's very unfortunate. It's very good news that it's not an actual proper serious injury. This might actually be the best news, that it's a knock that keeps him out for one game, that takes the pressure off switching it up top.
Okay, well, we'll see about that. And so we'll stick with you for this.
I hope anybody's not stupid enough to write us off.
Regulars will know, and if you're the first time watching us, this is a segment where Raf takes us through an opposition scouting report, so we get a good look and an idea of the opponents coming to the City ground for the match on Saturday. Over to you, Raf, the random pundit.
Great. No, thanks, Greg. So Chelsea are an interesting one. And for those that know, I do actually live down in London. I live very close to Chelsea. My other half is a Chelsea fan. And I have actually gone to a number of Chelsea games just because I love watching football. Go to Fulham as well because it's a short walk. And I get up to Nottingham loads and loads and loads. So for me, I actually know Chelsea very, very well. And they are a bizarre team at the moment, and you just don't know what Chelsea are going to turn up whatsoever. They are middle of the roading. They're 7th, 11 points, and it's kind of a bit of fits and starts. We referenced the fact that they did beat Liverpool, and they did lose to Brighton and Man U, but there's context to those losses, as you can see here. Against Man United, they lost. They were away at Man U. They lost 2-1, right? But the goalkeeper, Sanchez, was sent off in the 5th minute. They were at home to Brighton. They lost 3-1 there. But again, Chalobah was sent off in the 51st minute. So both of those games, they were down to 10 men. For one of them, 10 men for pretty much the entire game, and lost. And they rebound from that and then have Liverpool at home and beat them 2-1. So there is context to the losses. What you can see, though, from this chart, if we go to the top right, is they are plagued with injury at the moment. Now, quite a lot of these are knocks. So the ones that are listed as 100%ers in here. So Delap is a 100%er. Mudryk is a 100%er. He's banned. Delap is long-term injured. Asugo is long-term injured as well, right? But he's very much a backup off the bench. The other two are very much starters or key substitutes. Everyone else is kind of in that 50% chance of playing or 75% chance of playing. When you see 25%, I've done it from the Forest side, there's 25% of a chance that they will not play, as it were. Now, but these are key players. You've got Colwell, you've got James, you've got Fofana, the defender, you've got Fernandez. Cole Palmer, by the way, I've just got news before this. It's not a 50%, it's a 100%. He will not be playing. He is now out until November, which is massive news because he is, as everyone knows, is their key player. André Santos as well, who's really come on for them. I've got Tosin in twice, don't know why. But yeah, that's a bit of an error. So within here, they really are quite injury raven. And at the back as well, Colwell, James, Tosin, Fofana, they're all defenders and they've chopped and changed their defence quite a lot. What we have is when they are fit, there's really kind of the preferred formation, which is the 1-4-2-3-1, okay, of what we've normally seen at Forest. But it's very formulaic with Maresca. He would want one of the fullbacks to effectively push on when they've got the ball and invert into midfield to give them a midfield three. So effectively, you've got 3-3-3-1 is what they do when they turn into, and they've got the ball. Now, most of the time, that is Cucurella that does that from left back, which creates a bit of a hole around that left back side. So when we're actually playing, it's really, really good. If we can transition, win the ball back, Ando wins the ball back. Hopefully Douglas Luiz is back and he can win the ball back quickly. We can attack down our right. And there's a bit of an imbalance of a central defender trying to do a job on that left-hand side. So that's an opportunity. But when we have a look across all of this, there's injuries absolutely everywhere and substitutes. And they're chopping and changing. They have not got a settled 11. Okay. You've got players that are being played out of formation. Malon Gusto in the last game against Liverpool, he was used, he's a right back, but he was being used as a central midfielder alongside Caicedo. Okay. Enzo Fernandez, he really should be used as a 10 if using his skill set, but quite a lot of the time he's being forced into the midfield and being used out of there as well. At the back, they may have an issue with Reece James. Malon Gusto will deputise and he is an able deputy. Cucurella is the only one who's been a mainstay, and as much as he was useless when he first came to Chelsea, he's become one of their key players. But who their other two centre-backs are, not entirely too sure. I would imagine Chalobah starts and he's actually played himself into some serious form. But the rest of them are not on form and their defence is very, actually, at 6s and 7s quite a lot of the time. Sanchez has a clanger in him as well. So that defence is the key thing we go at. When we have a look at their attack, João Pedro will be the striker because they don't have any other options really up front with Delap being injured. And so he is a key threat. Cole Palmer's a key threat, but he's injured. For me, the other person that I would highlight up is Caicedo, Moise Caicedo. He is, when we talk about engine rooms, he is the player. If you think of N'Golo Kante back at Chelsea days, and he was basically two players on the pitch, Caicedo has grown even from his Brighton days and is now basically player of the match from that midfield role. And he will be that midfield engine and destroyer. But what I'll show you a little bit in a second is that he has been relied upon for way more than that this season thus far. Okay. So it's quite interesting of what we've got from a that's the wrong one. Right, I need to do this. And that's not the one. We want this one. Okay. So let's have a look at roughly where they are. So Caicedo, I've talked about it, and you can look at his heat map. He is absolutely everywhere in that middle 2/3. So other side of the boxes, he's absolutely everywhere. And it's interesting, you see there's a little heat blob that's starting to get red that is in the opposition D, okay? And I'll come on to why that is very interesting. Now, we have a look at Reece James. He is 50-50 if he's going to be fit or not. But if you have a look at Malon Gusto's heat map, it's even more extreme than Reece James is. But you see the fact that when he's being used as a right back, he spends most of his time deep in the opposition half down that right-hand side, hugging that line. He has been used as a midfielder from time to time. And that's why you see the heat map are actually being used on the left, but he drifts in a bit. And that's when he becomes that kind of inverted midfielder when he plays like that off the left-hand side. João Pedro, this is the familiar heat dot that we're seeing right on the centre line. Now, this is a bit misleading for João Pedro. So a lot of the time, he is right on the line, waiting for a break to be able to accelerate out and kind of counter and then score. But watching João Pedro, he's a little bit like Chris Wood. He is back helping out defensively quite a lot of time. He's a seriously hard worker like Caicedo, and he puts in a serious shift all over the pitch. So that also makes him a little bit more problematic to mark because he is dropping deep, he's coming back forward, and who picks him up is going to be a real problem. And that is one of the things we're going to have to figure out. We look at the form of the players that we've got here. Okay, so when we look at SofaScore, they've got 6 players that have averaged a 7 or higher. And again, I said we come back to Moise Caicedo. Caicedo is the highest scoring, 7.67 they have in their team. Consistently this season, he has been the driving force. I've said Chalobah's played himself into some form. He's the next highest. Tosin, who's probably injured, is the next. Then you've got João Pedro, Reece James, who may or may not play, and Estadio, right? Now, Esteval, he's an interesting one. I haven't highlighted him up as a key threat, but he popped up with the winning goal, I think, against Liverpool in, I think, the 96th minute. And he is, for such a young teenager, unbelievably skillful, but he's not quick. If he's going to play, he'll play off the right. And I think then you're going to have Neto that then moves over to the left-hand side. Otherwise, you're going to have Garnacho on the left and Neto on the right. But Esteval will come on at some point, and he needs to be carefully marked because his ball skills are next level. But as long as you've got someone, like if we switch Nico over to that side, he should be able to deal with him because he's got the pace to be able to deal with him. Zinchenko, I do worry slightly, but we'll see how we go. Now, the last thing I want to highlight is how at 6s and 7s this team is. I mentioned João Pedro, the fact that he drops deep and he's not your conventional 9. And he is their top assist person with 3 assists, right? But he's not their top goal scorer. He's got 2 goals. But Moise Caicedo, that enforcer of a 6, is the one with 3 goals in the league. And Fernandes out of midfield has got 3 goals. Chalobah's got 2, and João Pedro's got 2. So their goals are coming from non-standard places on the pitch, and it's not just standardly the striker. Okay, so this is why we don't know what Chelsea we're going to get. We don't know who's going to be fit, but we do know with their key players what they are going to do and how they're going to operate.
Okay, absolutely fantastic as ever. Thank you very much indeed to you, Raf. Okay, this is Talking Reds, and we'll take a very, very quick break.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
Everyone knows about the cheese. You get 10% discount off. Please do read the bio. All the information is there. All right. Time's moving along. We've been given a really good insight into Chelsea from Raf, guys. But I think Chelsea are a team that we perhaps might know more about than, let's say, a Burnley, because they're on TV more. We perhaps know their players more. So we know the threats that they can pose. And so with that in mind, I guess what we'll do now is, we'll do this just so that we can kind of marry the two together.
I'm a Statman. Fazendo som, Pedrinha Moraes fazendo som, e Pedrinha Moraes fazendo som.
As is standard now, I always have to give a shout out to Sergio, who is back in the hospital at the moment, but in a positive kind of sense. He's there undertaking a bit more treatment, and things are looking better. So shout out to you, Serge. Hope you're doing well, buddy. Over to you, Danscape. You're on mute there, buddy, so I'll let you take yourself off mute.
There we go.
There we go.
Still on mute.
There we go.
Thank you very much for that
It's all right.
reminder. So yeah, look, I suppose just a quick comparison between our performance and Chelsea's performance so far this season, based on the numbers. Look, we know our season's not been great, and Chelsea's, again, just touching on that, their performance score at the top there is like 40%. We're not talking about a team that's flying at the moment, but they do sort of outscore us on a lot of the kind of the team styles on the left that we've got here. So, we are struggling to find our style a little bit, apart from really wanting to control the pitch and get high up the pitch in terms of tackles and touches on the ball. That's the only bit where we kind of outperform them. But even as a counter-attacking side now, Chelsea score higher in that respect than we're kind of showing. So I think we need to find a style and stick to it maybe at this point. Where Chelsea have struggled a little bit this season, goalkeeping performance has not been great. Ball carrying and wing play, actually they don't score that high for those things, even though they've got about 1 million wingers, which is a surprise. But what we'll come on to in a minute in more is that difference in finishing. Like, they are finishing their chances big time so far this season, which is something that I'll look at from the Forest side of things. So what I've done here is compare the same fixtures for Forest between this season and last season, obviously swapping out some of the relegated sides for the promoted sides. So we know it's not been a great start. There's a lot of red on this chart, which means we're kind of performing worse or less than the same fixtures last time round. So we're 5 points behind where we were. We're 6 goals scored behind where we were, but we've only actually conceded 1 more goal in these same fixtures than we did last time. So although we're focused on defensive issues with Ange and that side of the game, it's very much the goal scoring that's actually the problem at the moment. We're not really creating. So if you look at the XG, if you like the underlying numbers behind it, we've created 2.5 to 3 less goal scoring chances in these same games. We've had 21 fewer shots, which is quite a lot over only 6 or 7 games. Again, it's that attacking side of the game that's actually struggling. And then you compound that with the fact that we've then taken 3 less of our chances. So we're, against the XG with 3 goals behind that, which just amplifies the fact that we're creating a bit less, and then we're not taking those chances. And it puts all the pressure onto the defensive side of the game. One thing that is interesting, though, is that we've had a lot more touches in the attacking third, which we kind of know because we're starting to control the pitch a bit more, but we've not converted that into more touches in the penalty area, right? So we've had 27 more touches in the attacking third, but 1 fewer touch in the attacking penalty area. So it still comes down to your quality in the final third, not just deciding to sort of take control of the pitch. It's still what you do with it and whether teams camp in and stop you. And funnily enough, we've actually played 3 more long passes or completed 3 more long passes this season than last season in the same fixtures. So there's not necessarily this dramatic shift in style. It's just that we're not quite finding the final ball in the final third there. So that's us to last season. But then I also thought I'd just compare us to our last 12 games. Yeah, so 7 games this season, 5 games last season, and then the 12 games before that, just to sort of see where we stand on that. And actually it's a lot closer than, the numbers are a lot closer here than if you just compare the fixtures. So obviously there's different games in here, but actually there's not that much difference. So for example, the few I'd highlight is our XG is actually only minus 0.1 different for the last 12 games to the 12 games before that. So actually we've been performing like this for a while, which we kind of know, and people touch on that, our form dropped off, but there's not this dramatic shift in the fact that we're not creating as much. It's been going a little while. Our expected goals against is actually bang the same, So again, that trend hasn't suddenly dropped off a cliff over these last kind of 12 games. It's been a bit like that. We have actually started having a few more shots, but again, we've not taken our chances on that. And one thing that stood out is our average progressive pass distance is like 10 yards lower, which I think, to me, I'm still trying to understand this, and chip in if you've got another view. But I think what that means is that we aren't able to exploit the space to make those longer, direct, progressive balls up the pitch, which we were doing at our prime last season, where you could cover, a 20-yard pass that would unlock the game. And I think that's obviously because teams are wise to the more they compact us and the more our progressive passes are only like 5-10 yards long, the less space there is on the pitch for us to use our pace and exploit. And I think that's what we're struggling to unlock as teams see us more, teams don't see us as a game that you come to and go toe-to-toe with.
Dan, just on that, I mean, you've outlaid there that the figures, the stats aren't a million miles away. You said it's a lot closer than people might have thought. And it leads me into the Ange era. and going back to Ange and that conversation again about how everyone has turned so quickly, the swing voters I'm talking about, the swing voters have now in their droves gone to get him out, he's not working. And that's based on fine margins. And there's that comment, isn't it? Oh, it's all about fine margins. But it feels like it's never been more true with Forest under Ange. You think about Betis away and them scoring late on. You know, if we'd nicked that win, we'd never be talking about this now. We're talking about Sunderland and Chris Wood, that Chris Wood header that he would normally score. You know, again, that fine margin. Talking about Michelin and those set pieces and just not getting the rub of the green in many ways. You know, again, it's fine margins. These kind of things have been the reason why the Ange question is so vehement. Would you agree with that or not?
I think it is just the results. I think we obviously, you know, it can be more complex than that, but I think
the results come from those fine margin moments, don't they?
That's what I mean. Yeah. So it's the fine margins that just, because what we're showing in these numbers is that we're playing a similar way, but we were still picking up at 1 point per game more in those 12 games before these last 12 games, right? So we were just doing it at the right time, weren't we? Our game plan as a whole was working, as opposed to let's just do the right things and hope it works. We were doing the right things, and then we had that moment of connection between Elanga and Wood, or whatever it was that unlocked it. So that's what I'm saying when it comes to Ange is, it's not so much about style, it's about he's got to find a way of perhaps just putting together some partnerships on the pitch that will work in those moments. And the only way to do that is probably to have a consistent team and some time on the training pitch, because that's what often decides the games at this level, doesn't it? That's because everyone's good at retaining possession and stopping teams playing. And then I just thought I'd quickly look at a similar thing for Chelsea between this season and last season, again, to emphasise the fact they're not flying, but also that they're sort of doing things the other way to us. So they're actually a point worse off this season than last season, playing the same games. They've scored the same number of goals, but they've conceded 2 more than they did in those same games. But the most interesting bit is they've actually created 4 fewer chances in their XG than last season. But they've scored 5.5 more goals from the chances they've created. So they are in that vein that we were in at our prime last season, right? They've just been taking every chance that comes their way to get the results over the line. And you know, their fans are probably not unhappy with their manager and how things are going. It's just a case of they are doing it. They are doing the business in the box at both ends. So that's pretty much it from me. Yeah, I'm highlighting some of the same players on Chelsea's side that I think Raf's flagged up. Caicedo is the one that stands out in midfield. But the other players, again, they don't really stand out. You know, when you look at the numbers for individuals, João Pedro is one that's doing well, but Neto and Estevio, they're okay, but they're not standing out from the numbers as being, you know, top of their game at the moment. So I guess I'm saying there is hope. There is hope, regardless of who the manager is, regardless of where we're at. This is not necessarily a team that's absolutely on it, that we should go into this fearing a battering.
Okay, thank you very much. Very eloquently put, as ever. Okay, right. So, Tim Shipman was in the comments. Let me go back to that. He doesn't agree with me, and that's fine. He says, not about fine margins. We crumble. Michelin was absolutely terrible defending. Sunderland clueless. We looked lost. I'm not quite sure we looked lost against Sunderland. I thought we had them against the ropes a lot of the time in the second half. We just didn't take our chances. But I take your point. Dr. Johnny HD 7. Is that right? Johnny, whatever it says. Nico has been consistent. Igor has goals. Nimmers has Wood. Anderson is in form with England, and hopefully Murillo and Louise can help. We've got the players, Richard. That's what we need to kind of think about now. We've got the players in our squad, and we've talked about it being possibly the best squad Forest have had for years, with the talent that's on the pitch and on the bench. We cried last season about no depth in that defence. You know, we loved Jota Silva, but you know he had a ceiling really, and others didn't even get off the bench, such as Ramon Sosa, because they weren't trusted. But we've got players in abundance now. So let's turn our attention, Richard, to what the team might look like. So again, we're kind of delving into Ange's brain a little bit, but also, you know, what would your team be for the match on Saturday? What you can see on the screen, guys, is how we lined up against Newcastle. It was a back 3 with Morato, Milenkovic, and Jer Cunha. Williams and Savona operating down the flanks, Yates and Anderson in the midfield, and Doyle Gibbs-White operating just behind Chris Wood. Where are you at, Richard, with team selection for this one? Good luck.
Wow. Thank you. I'm going to go for a back four. I think to Dan's point, if creativity and lack of, I guess, industry, I guess, is a concern, let's get the back four going. So that back four consists of, as far as I'm aware, Zinchenko is healthy, right? So everyone keeps talking about how much he will infuse some life into this Ange ball sort of experiment. So let's go with Zinchenko on the left, Nico on the right, Murillo in place of Morato in that left center back position, and then Milenkovic in his normal spot. I would say that it's going to be Sangare and Anderson in the middle. I like Sangare's physicality. He's got some really nice precision passing in him at certain intervals throughout the match, and maybe this is a time for him. I know he's been on with Ivory Coast. He's been on international duty as well. Anderson, the hard part is, he's probably knackered, but at the same time, you just can't take your best player off the pitch. That's just not an option. So Anderson's in there. This is the weird part for me. I'm completely dumbfounded as to where I need to go from a winger standpoint, because it's just like, seems to be the hardest problem to solve, but it seems like we're drifting towards trying to get towards somewhat of a consistent starting 11. So I would move Gibbs-White over to the right, because you don't want to take his creativity off the pitch. I know he's struggled. He's been a bit, not bad, he's just not really been as impactful as we need him to be, given what his station is with the club. And Doyle on the left, I'll keep him there for now, because he's had assists, he's had goals, not a ton of them, but he's had them. And then we've got Igor Jesus, I think, is going to be in place of Wood. And then in that other sort of spot, I'm putting Douglas Luiz in there. And I think I would actually, now I'm really starting to put myself in a bit of a pretzel here.
Well, you can have those players, but I'm not quite sure they'd feature in that.
Yeah, formation. I think I meant to have Luis and Anderson kind of in a two pairing, and then Sangare playing more in a behind them. Yeah, so I think it's a 4-1. Yeah, and then move Sangare back to where Anderson is right now. Yeah.
Oh, you'd have Sangare sitting behind Anderson.
Yeah, more of that traditional 6, and then Igor Jesus. So I'm kind of going with that sort of role. I know Raf's more of a traditional flat 3, and I think that's sort of where I'm headed. But it's more of giving that coverage to the back line. So if Zinchenko does push up, you got Sangare to provide some depth there to help, mitigate some sort of counter or some sort of open play concerns. But I like, the fact that we've got a little bit of creativity on the pitch with Zinchenko inverting and doing what he does, pushing up the pitch. You've got that ability to create assists, and he's got some decent physicality to his play and directness to his play in Ndoye. And then you've got the creativity of Luis to unlock some things in terms of his passing, his range of passing, and he can defend a little bit too. He's not quite the defender Anderson is, but he gives you that option. And Gibbs-White on the right hand side. So again, back four with Zinchenko, Murillo, Milenkovic, Williams, Sangare in that 6, and Ndoye on the left wing, Luis, Anderson, Gibbs-White, and then Igor Jesus up top, because I think Igor gives you a lot of versatility.
Okay. Thank you very much. So there are options. I'm going to chip in with mine. I'm assuming Wood's fit, and if Wood's fit, I'm playing Chris Wood. Igor Jesus come back from Brazil. I think that travel comes into play, and I just think that Igor plays against Porto next week. So for me, Chris Wood starts if he's fit. If he's not, obviously it's Igor Jesus. I'm not really a fan of the 4-1-4-1 at home. I'm still going to go back to the 4-2-3-1. I'm taking the Sangare out, and Luiz goes in there, and Anderson goes in the midfield. Now this number 10 spot is a Gibbs-White spot, and on the right I'm going with the winger, and I'm bringing Callum Hudson-Odoi in and switching him and Ndoye over. For me, Hudson-Odoi starts against Chelsea all day long. So for those that can't see it, I've kept the back four of Zinchenko, Murillo, Milenkovic, and Williams. I've gone to 4-2-3-1 with Anderson and Luiz in that midfield, Gibbs-White in the 10, and Ndoye and Hudson-Odoi on the wings, Wood up top. That's how I see it. But again, it's not rigid. It's fluid. I wouldn't be against it being a 3-man midfield of Anderson, Luiz, and Sangare. There's even a shout potentially that you got a Yates or Dominguez to come in as well. But for me, I just think that we've got to have attacking threat down both wings. again, we're putting our money on Luiz and Zinchenko and Murillo all being back fit, and Wood as well on that. But we're just gonna have to wait and see. But for the here and now, that would be my team. Raf, comes to you, mate. Where are you at with a team? And I know you like a 3-man midfield. What do you reckon?
Right. So yeah, you're right. It's going to be a 4-3-3, please. And for me, I am having Zinchenko. I don't know if he's going to be actually fit or not. FPL within We Trust has got him as a 25% chance of actually playing, but let's just say he is. And also, I've seen in the comments that Milenkovic didn't play yesterday with a knock internationally. But say they're all fit, then it is Zinchenko, Murillo, Milenkovic, and Nico. Then I'm going to have Anderson in the middle, and then I am going to have Luiz on the, let's say, left or the right-hand side. I'm going to put Yates instead of Ndoye. And I don't care if I get pelters for that, but Yates is what we need in this team. Not every player needs to be technically the best player in the world. We need heart, we need grit, we need fight. We need players that can win the ball, and we need players that do not give the ball away, right? Which is why Gibbs White is dropped. Right now, he gives away fouls and he gives the ball away. So we need proper wingers. And so I'm having Bakwa on the right, I'm having Ndoye on the left, and they may very well invert if we are trying not to cut in and Chelsea are going to their back three central defenders. And we're trying to create width, so they may. So Callum Hudson-Odoi on the left hand side, and sorry, Jesus up top. Jesus up top. Callum Hudson-Odoi on the left. Jesus up top. Bakwa on the right, and Callum Hudson-Odoi may invert with Bakwa if we are trying to hit width and then cross balls in. For me, that's what I want. That's fight throughout the middle of that team. That's physicality. That's fight. That's engine. That's people that give 100% the entire time, all the way through the spine of that team.
Can't argue with that. I mean, listen, we've all got making good cases for teams and players. Love the idea of Ryan Yates. Dan, what are you thinking?
I liked the look of the team you had on, but I mean, I'm not tied to any at the minute. I think the bits I'd point out from here is what I think the way we win this game is not to probably go toe to toe with Chelsea. So I worry about Zinchenko at left back, for example, especially if he's not 100% fit. I would rather we had a better option there, but I agree if he's fit, he probably is the best option. So that's a concern for me. Dominguez, you touched on, is an interesting one because he kind of appeared for Sunderland and then he's disappeared again. So we don't know what stage he's at. Is he, a fully fit Dominguez gets into our team really, or should do based on last season. So where does he fit in? And obviously we sort of don't expect Douglas Luiz to play 90 minutes in this game. So if you put him into the starting 11, you've probably got to have a plan from 60 minutes, one or the other. We also don't necessarily think Elliot Anderson is up for playing another 90 minutes and then another 90 minutes in the week as well in the Europa League. So maybe Luiz and Anderson are the two that swap as your subs in the game, as your slightly more advanced kind of 8 in the midfield. I'm just talking around it because I'm not going to say to you, put this guy here, put this guy here. You guys have covered options that are all valid options. It's just that, and I think this is where Ange is, unfortunately, is there are different options, but there's not enough connection between them to say that these three play really well as a midfield, for example. And that's my issue with that front three that Raf's got up there, is just that we've not seen enough of a link up between Bakwa, Jesus and Hudson-Odoi to say that when it's in those moments I talked about, when the fine margins and all that, are those three on the same wavelength that when you get your few couple of chances in this game that they're going to link up and know where to put the ball and finish it. And that's a question, I suppose, for the training pitch, whether Ange has managed to do that this week. So look, I'd probably go more to your lineup, which is a bit more tried and tested, but like Ange, I've got no idea.
I was thinking about something different, and Brucey read my mind when he asks, do we think Ange might go to the back three like we saw against Newcastle? Is it possible that he does that? So let's kind of have a quick sort of idea of something like a 3-4-3. And let's suggest that Zinchenko is injured. So I would suggest, and I'm just going to go random here, that Jer Cunha would come back in and Murillo would play, and Milenkovic would play as well. But that means Williams can go on the right. So I beg your pardon. Williams can go on the left. You probably see Savona coming back in like he did start against Newcastle. And then, you've got a setup with Cunha, Murillo and Milenkovic. Obviously, that might not be how to set up. Williams, Anderson, Louise and Savona with a front three that could be the backward Jesus, Hudson-Odoi combination. Or you could take Bakwa out. And I don't see Gibbs White not playing in this team, if I'm honest with you. Gibbs White comes in and Hudson-Odoi or Endoy or Bakwa or McAtee or Amari Hutchinson. So like you were just talking around it, Dan, it's kind of where you kind of perhaps need to be. But that could be a back three. What are we thinking in that respect then, guys, about back threes and so on? Richard Spray, could it be a back three for you? I mean, are we able to hurt Chelsea with a back three?
I think there's some. If you got back on the pitch, obviously you've got some creativity, you've got some pace, you've got a guy who can drop as well to help defend. I think Dan was calling for that a little bit against Newcastle, if I remember correctly, that might be a value. So yeah, I could see that if you get Cunha on in that Savona spot, you've got some height as well to help mitigate some of their effectiveness on set pieces. But he also can shown that he's not it's not his natural position per se, but at the same time he's been able to adapt and be able to play that role. So yeah, I could see that being a value and throwing in Cunha on the right hand side. And go ahead. Sorry.
That right wing. It's just that right wing back. We don't have a natural right wing back. Savona for me doesn't give you the outlet.
Being that guy, didn't we? And he's played it before. I mean, he wasn't selected for Newcastle, but Endoy was. So, I'm surprised at how much Savona gets up. I thought he was going to be a bit more, not go past the halfway line type of fullback, but he does get up there for a 6'5" lad. So he surprised me as well. But listen, we've got options coming out of our ears. That's the thing, and we won't know until the team's revealed. I think the press conferences will be tomorrow, I'd imagine, at some point. We're going to sort of spend a few more minutes flicking it back to Ange. I suppose we should. We are getting a bit of heat from our Australian friends, and I mentioned that at the start. And what one chap didn't like a lot of what was being said when we had Jamie Tatler on for a One With episode. He was very, very disparaging, and his name's Matt Powell. And we thank you, Matt, for tuning in. Matt was, I beg your pardon, Jamie Tatler was talking about Dan and Raf that Ange Postecoglou was underqualified to come into the Premier League. Doesn't know how he got the Spurs job and doesn't know how he got the Forest job. And I said, I think that was a bit of a statement. Matt has put a lot of comments on YouTube, and obviously Japan beat Brazil yesterday. And he says, how about those Japanese defeating Brazil? Like I said, winning the ultra competitive and even J League is no joke. Underqualified with a face palm. So he's pushing back on the idea that Ange is underqualified. Raf, has Jamie got a point, do you think? Is Ange underqualified? Do the trophies that he won in the J League and in Australia count for anything at all? And is Scotland such a pub league that doesn't count either?
I think you can only win what's put in front of you. And he won those leagues. And then we talk about the car crash, apparently. But the first season he was with Spurs, they finished 5th, right? It's not bad at all. The next season, absolutely injury ravaged. He won the Europa League, right? Won the Europa League. And he couldn't do both the league and Europa League with the amount of players that he actually had fit. And he had to prioritize one over the other. This is quite public about the fact that we're just sacking off the Premier League. We're not going to get relegated. We're sacking it off because we don't have the bandwidth to do both. So I think a lot of this criticism is totally unfair on him. A lot of it is situational. And he is trying to, and he's been very public about trying to change Forest. Marinakis wants us to play differently. He's been brought in to do that. Marinakis has given him the idea to do that. It's not going to happen overnight. So no, I don't agree. And I do think that there's a lot of too much heat on Ange, and he's being the scapegoat while we are trying to morph into something different.
Doesn't it become easier though? Sorry, real quick. Sorry, Dan. I didn't mean to not give you a chance. Doesn't it become easier to sack off the Premier League though when the teams that are in the Premier League, especially towards the bottom end of the table, are not doing well? Historically bad. I mean, it's hard.
We're not sacking the Premier League off after 7. I don't think
No. I'm just saying that mentality of like, I get it. He had to shift over to focusing on the Europa because he felt. I mean, he was obviously had gone deep in that and put all of his eggs in that basket. I just thought it's probably a lot easier to sack off the Premier League in that scenario because he's not worried about getting relegated. At least not as much as he probably would this season.
If he did,
again, that may not have any relevance to the conversation, so I'll just be quiet now.
No, don't do that. It's completely irrelevant. I think he did sack it off, but he sacked it off at a point where he knew Spurs weren't going to get relegated because, as you've said, those 3 teams were at the bottom and they weren't going to be shifted out of the bottom 3. But my question, Dan, was: Is Ange a lucky man to get the jobs that he's got? Because basically, is the J League and the Australian League and wherever else he's been just a complete level below? So actually winning anything in those divisions shouldn't count, because actually I could win the league at Celtic. And when you come into the other thing as well, when you come into the Premier League and you finish 5th in your first season with the last guy's team, how much of that is down to the last guy's team doing what they do? And actually when it's your second season and it's your team and everything else, you completely F it up. Was he a lucky man to get those jobs and the Forest job?
Well, I think there is. Sometimes you do get a hangover from what the previous manager instilled in teams, and you do get that run. I enjoyed listening to Jamie's podcast with you. I thought it was interesting, and he put his points across well, probably better than I will here. But I sort of, look, we understand where he's coming from, right? We experienced the difference in level between the Championship, where we took a group of players and we basically put together the same team. They went out every week and they rolled their way through a lot of those other Championship sides when we had the right manager in place, who was a good manager in Steve Cooper. And then we saw the level change when you came up to the Premier League, right? You make a mistake, the other team scores. You make another mistake, the other team scores again. And that's the level you're at. So we cannot ignore the fact, and I don't watch Japanese football, obviously. I can't, I'd love to. It probably is actually good, but I don't watch it, so I can't comment on the quality of the league. But we know that generally the quality goes up as the money and everything and the eyes and all the attention goes up. So in Scotland and in Japan, you will play a lot of teams that will let you off mistakes. They will let you make an error of leaving a big space behind your fullback, and they'll have the chance and they'll miss it. Like, this is why the strikers end up in the Premier League, because they are the best strikers that are out there. So it is a step up in level. The margins are finer, and the reality is last season showed that the way Ange wanted to play only worked to a point. But if you weren't better than the other side at taking your chances, you still lost games. And that can work the other way. If you go for a defensive option, if you're not as good at the defending in those key moments, you will lose games and you won't score, which is where we might be with Sean Dyche in charge, right? And that's why he struggled at Everton, because he was just conceding a goal, but he couldn't score 2 kind of thing. So you just flip the issue, and that's what football is. That's why we love it. It's a balance. You've got to find a balance. You've got to get both bits right. You've got to take into account the other team and your own team and your strengths. So I don't agree that you can just sack off the Premier League. I don't know why we're so accepting as his strategy. Like, is that just a modern football thing?
I don't think we're saying that he's just going to do that. He did it last year.
Yeah, the best managers don't do that, do they? They find a way. Like, why did we spend £200 million on a squad if we're just going to concentrate on one competition? It doesn't make any sense, really. I think it's fair enough that he did it, but it's a weird one-off. I don't think you'll see many managers saying, like, okay, I'm just going to win this one trophy, all right? Yeah. So there's
injuries were crazy last year.
Okay, but do you not think part of managing a team is this holistic thing of that the injuries fall to some extent on the way you play and the manager and the quality of your fitness staff,
Possibly,
and the quality of how you do your training. Like, I think there's things that you learn from operating in the top big 4 leagues, because you get the connections with these top quality fitness guys and all that. I don't know if all his backroom staff's Australian, are they the best guys in the world at doing the coaching jobs and the fitness and all that? Or if he'd had more experience in these top leagues, would he be able to pull on? That's what Nuno. No, but I'm saying but that's what Nuno had. Is he had?
Fair question.
Nuno's had 8 to 10 years of whatever it is, experience in top leagues, and he can make a link to a guy who's one of the best in the business at fitness. You know what I mean? And he can pull him into his team. And so that's what maybe, again, I'm assuming the coaches that work in these other leagues don't necessarily get to the same level. Otherwise, they come to the Premier League. So maybe we've got them through Ange. There's lots to it, but look, I think what Jamie said, there is some validity to the fact that the Premier League is tough for a reason, and it can find people out.
I have said, and I'll say it again now, I live in a Spurs area. I've got a lot of Spurs friends, and I shared a voice note with Richard, and I share it with you guys offline from my friend Dean, who is a Spurs fan. And he said, this is what you get with Ange. He said, you will make excuses for him. They've all said it. You will start making excuses for him very early on. And the injury's fine, but Van der Ven was a key player for them, and he was injured with 3 hamstrings last year. He hasn't been injured once so far. He's been ever present. So something in what you just said about, does the manager's style and philosophy tax the players too much, so much so that those injuries come, and therefore you are having to play Archie Gray, a midfielder you signed that probably wasn't going to get much game time at centre back, stuff like that. And so, managing a squad of players is difficult, and all clubs get injuries. So yes, he did have a lot of injuries that piled up. I think he did potentially, and Dean and other Spurs fans agree, he did sack off the Premier League and put all his eggs in the basket of winning the Europa. And I think that's a pretty good strategy. When the difference between finishing 17th and 15th is a little bit of money, fine, no problem. I get that. But it's about survival. And if you're saying I can give you Champions League football and a trophy all in one go, then ultimately he did that. So all the Australian commenters that have said, well, look, he's won a trophy, can't take that away from him. I'll push back and say, well, look, it was the worst final in history. Their pathway was the easiest pathway to the final you've ever seen. And, he would never, ever in a million years have been given the Nottingham Forest job if he hadn't won the Europa League based on last season. So if it's all being based on winning the Europa League, then, he's perhaps up against it. I also think, before we close, I'll say this. Ange is getting heat because it's Ange. His personality, the person that he is, his personality, his manner. And I think if it was another manager with the same 7 games record, I don't think the temperature would be quite as hot on him as it is on Ange. We had all those I don't want Ange in the first places, and the swing voters are going away from him now towards get him out of our club. But Richard, I need to ask you, is the personality going to be his undoing? And is it fair that that's going to be the undoing? Sometimes people just don't fit, do they? Sometimes.
That's true. The personality may not enhance the situation and bring any more comfort, but I would say that it's about the results, as Dan pointed out. I think that's the question. Are we going to get those? And, I'll give you my score prediction if we're there, if that's okay. I think we're going to lose 2-1. I think we'll get a goal, but I just don't think we're going to be able to stay compact and controlled enough in our final third. Maybe we give up another set piece goal and we'll lose this match. I typically don't pick us to lose. Probably that's my fault for being too much of a homer, but yeah, I think we lose it. And I just think that's the problem, is the results. He does as I put in the graphic, for our thumbnail, I think the sands of the hourglass are running out, unfortunately. And that's not completely on him. I mean, I think it's just a situation, unfortunately, but I do hope he does well. I hope we succeed. I hope we win, of course. But it's nothing against him personally. I just think it's a very difficult situation. I just don't think he has a lot of leash at this stage.
Okay, so you're saying a 2-1 defeat, did you say? Okay,
correct.
I know we're out of time, and Richard, I know you've got to go. So Danscape, quickly, score prediction.
Probably the same. Again, no idea. Like everything at the minute, no idea. But let's go the same. Hopefully, just some positives from the performance.
And Raf, you?
1-1. 1-1.
I'm in that camp as well. I'm in the draw camp. I'm going to go Desmond. I'm going to go 2-2. I think there's a big game coming up where big things have to happen for Ange, and I think that he's going to benefit from having worked with a group of players, albeit some coming back from international duty. And I think that he could draw out. We've seen Raf's description of Chelsea, that they're injury ravaged. Casado is a danger man from that midfield spot. Estevao, I think we've got to keep an eye on him. I think he could hurt us, but I think we've got players to hurt them as well. I really, really do. Again, I want to be glass half full as much as possible. Thank you very much for watching, listening, chipping in. Go ahead, hit like, hit subscribe, and stay with us. Don't unsubscribe if you hear something you don't like. Come and debate us. Come and get involved in the chat. That's what it's all about. If you hear something you don't like, don't unsubscribe. Stay subscribed and come and tell us why you think we're wrong. That's what we want to hear. Okay, Richard Spray in Oklahoma. Thank you so much to my co-host, Danscape, Raf. You two are legends as ever. And you guys out there listening, watching along, come on, guys, stand together. Let's get behind him. He's still the gaffer. We've got to support him for as long as he's there. No more calls against the manager, please, at the stadium. Get behind him. Get behind the team. That's the most important thing. Come on, you Reds.
Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.